Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending our session on the MLS changes and updates that are going to be happening. And I am the president of Monmouth Ocean Regional Realtors. I just wanted to thank you again for coming. And I know there's going to be a lot of questions. We are going to try to address as many as we can. But I just want to introduce our panel today. We have Marie McAndrew. She is our Senior Director of Member Support and Broker Relations of Monmouth Ocean Regional Realtors. We have Caitlin Baumbach. She is the Senior Director of MLS and Technology of Monmouth Ocean Regional Realtors. And we have Linda Campos, who is the Chairperson of the MLS Committee. I also want to thank the MLS Committee for all their hard work this year in all the implementation that we have to put forth. So thank you so much.
Very welcome.
Thank you, Diane. What we're going to talk about today is the upcoming changes, and we're going to start with Linda Campos, our MLS chair, who's going to explain what's going on and what you can expect.
So I think that we all know the NAR preliminary settlement stating that all offerings of commissions must be removed from every MLS by August 17th. So in light of that, they've also tasked the all MLSs to enforce and police the fact that no one is offering commissions and that there are buyer agency agreements in place. So the timeline that we have set for you right now is obviously we have trainings beginning with today, all throughout the month of July to help everybody in the transition to the deadline. The commission fields will be removed in the MLS effective August 15th. We tried to go to that last minute, except Flex MLS is not available to do it on that last date or the week before. So all commission fields will be removed from the MLS effective August 15th. As far as buyer agency agreements, right now, we're awaiting our approval, or we're waiting for the advice of our counsel as to how we will be compliant with that. So that will be either sending a copy of a buyer agency agreement or a form that an authorized broker can fill out stating that there is a buyer agency agreement in place. And the way that we will be doing that is just like the staff will be doing that, just like they do listing audits as of right now, which is every 20th pending. Am I correct, Caitlin?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Every 20th pending in the MLS, a form will be generated. And again, we're not really sure how the process is going to go. We have until till the end of the month of July to await our legal counsel's instructions on that. Is there anything else, Caitlin, you think that I'm missing?
I just want to add that we are also working on constraints to add to the public remarks and agent notes fields. That'll kind of just give you a warning as you're typing them if you're using any words that are going to prompt some type of a warning that you can't use it. So if there's a % sign in there, it'll prompt you. Maybe you want to change the verbiage that you're using. Any type of thing like that, like help text, we can provide just to make it easier of a transition. We're working on that to just put that in place.
And I think also we're going to be having pop-ups, correct, on Flex when you sign in, giving you the countdown and reminding everyone. We're really coming from educating and partnering with our brokers and our agents and our members. This is not about becoming a police state. NAR mandated that we do police this, unfortunately, but we all work together. We're all in it together. And I think that we can do it. I mean, it's not just New Jersey, it's everyone. So we're going to work together and get through it. I promise.
That's right. These are challenges that are facing everyone. And the key here is that we are going to support you in every way that we can, whether it's through education, whether it's being here to answer your questions, whatever it takes to get through this time. It's going to take a little time. Linda, when you had mentioned about compensation, I know we get questions now regarding the compensation that is already in the MLS, and whether agents need to get new listing agreements. How is that going to be handled?
So if you have a listing that is active come August 17th, you need to do nothing. what's the only thing that's going to happen effective on the 15th is you are going to see all offers of compensation removed from the MLS. You do not need to get a new listing agreement executed. You do not need to have an addendum. Your seller still has the opportunity to offer a commission to a buyer agent. It's just going to be, the only mandate is removed from the MLS. So you'll have to find alternate ways to communicate offers of compensation or commission.
I know that's a question that we get asked a lot. And I have to mention, most recently too, I just had a call from a broker yesterday saying, why is this all happening? I know that comes as a shock to some people, but people have questions. Some people don't understand. How did this all come to fruition? So if you can give us a brief explanation of where this is and why it's here.
So Diane, do you want to take that one?
Yeah,
Sure.
that'd be great.
So, there was a huge lawsuit and then a bunch of copycat lawsuits throughout the country, suing realtors for, practices that they said were, unethical, not fair trade, making commissions mandatory, which we all know that they're not. They're all negotiable, and they always have been. But because the lawsuit was won by the plaintiffs, there have been many settlements going around from large firms as well as NAR, and NAR basically wanted to just make sure that we as members are covered, that we're not going to be sued. So they had to make the settlement to cover as many members and MLSs as possible so that we are not in harm's way and we can go on doing business. Obviously, not as before, because we had to make some changes so that the Department of Justice and the attorneys would be happy with what we were presenting. So
Diane, if I could
It's-
ask you, we obviously, when they first came out with the preliminary settlement, everyone was kind of upset thinking, wow, they kind of really didn't stand by us. However, when you really read through it, am I correct that the reason the settlement is the way that it is because it protects us from all future lawsuits, not only from a seller side, but from a buyer side and from any other class action lawsuits, correct?
I don't think about the buyer side. If there are some buyer lawsuits out there as well right now, which have not, come to court yet. I mean, everything takes so long, but no, for sellers, yes, absolutely, we are covered. And, it's a lot of change, I know, and nobody likes change. But I think that the clarity that we're going to bring, demonstrate our value, communicate our value to our clients is super important. And, we have to focus on what matters to the client, that we're removing stress in this highly complicated, high-stake transaction and serving as their trusted advisor and, navigating them through all the nuances and negotiations and everything that happens in a real estate transaction. I mean, listen, the NAR is continually speaking to the Department of Justice. They just had some talks with them a couple of weeks ago. And, they're trying to emphasize that what we do here is so important to Americans and homeownership, and what they're doing is not helping the underserved groups. We have so many first-time home buyers, minorities that want to buy a home. It's so hard for them to even afford to come up with a down payment, never mind pay their agent. So, that's things that we have to explain to a seller also when we're taking a listing, that we know that, you don't have to pay a buyer's agent, but is that in your best interest? Are you going to get the most activity on your home and the best possible offer, terms and everything else if you don't have the most people coming through? So, it's going to be a very big learning curve. We're here to help everyone through this, and we all need to work together. We have to, you know, listen, we have to cooperate with one another, right? It's like answering the phone again. It's, it's like it was back in the day. Like we just really have to help each other through this. And, there's going to be bumps in the road, but we'll get through it and we'll look back and say, you know what, it all worked out for the best. And it's all we could do. We just have to move forward. So I hope I answered your question.
That was great. And that was a key point. One of the things that's going to be so important going forward is communication. I know in the past we received calls from members or from our agents regarding not being able to reach an agent about a showing or whatever. Now it's going to be crucial that our members pick up the phone. Communication is going to be the key to be able to, for this business to continue, and that agents will be able to do their jobs. That is a really good point. And it's so important to mention that one of the key aspects of this is that compensation cannot in any shape or form be coming from the MLS. It can't be in fields. It can't be an interesting point that was brought up by an agent recently was, can I send it out in a reverse prospecting? It doesn't matter who it's going to. It just can't be sent. So could you speak a little about that? Anybody would like to take that?
So, as far as, we
You have
can't
to
have any,
reiterate, how
yeah,
important their
we
job
can't
is
have
going
any
to be.
loopholes, like, don't look for loopholes and ways to promote compensation through the MLS. You just really cannot. Reverse prospecting is one really good example, which I'm glad you brought up, Marie, because, people might not think about that as going through the MLS, but it is. And yeah, there's still a way. I mean, you could copy and paste the email addresses into your own email and send it out to people. As long as it's not going through the MLS in any way, you could still promote it on your website, on the sign. You could put a sign rider if you want. You could send out flyers, you could send emails, put it on social media. Anywhere you think it would be appropriate, it just cannot be through the MLS at all. At all. And
Right. And there are third-party sites that are being created, entrepreneurial people creating third-party websites where you can host that. But I think not only can you not reverse prospect that, but it also cannot be in any website or any syndication that feeds directly from the MLS, right? Because
right,
we've had questions of, oh, well, why can't I just put it in showing time? Because showing time is a direct link to the MLS. But it's a valid question, right? Because it is a
right.
separate app, but because it is connected to the MLS and you can link to it right from the MLS, that's what we're not allowed to do. So that is the tricky part of being compliant with NAR and trying to facilitate to do what's best for our members and to make the transition as easy as possible for our members, but without breaking, without violating the settlement.
Absolutely. One of the questions we received, is there going to be a new listing agreement, or is there going to be changes to the contract of sale? Linda, if you would like to respond to that.
There is a new listing agreement coming. Right. Currently, we are working with the board's attorneys. The MLS committee met with them about a week and a half ago and went over the first preliminary draft and then asked for a few other things to be added to that. Just on a side note, where right now on a listing agreement where it asks if they can have a lockbox on their property or if they want their address shown, we also think it's a good idea whether or not the seller is going to allow video or virtual showing. So we figured if we're changing our listing agreement to become compliant with the settlement, we might as well make the changes that that we all know we need in our daily practice. So if there's any input from any of the members on here or any of the members that we have that are currently not on here that hear about this, please let us know of changes that you'd like to see, because we are drafting to come up with a new one. As far as the contract of sale, I don't have anything in writing, but I do know the state has been working on it, on drafting a new contract of sale, because we are going to need transparency, right, on the contract as far as if someone is getting or offering a commission, who the commission is being paid by, because everything is set in stone in that contract.
Perfect. Talking about forms, I know that some brokerages are creating their own buyer agency agreements,
Mhm.
and that's acceptable, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. Any broker, the state doesn't require you to use their forms. They have one there for brokers who don't want to create their own, but they're free to have, as long as it hits all the points that are required. And I think that's why, again, for ease in the compliance of it and having the audits of it, we're again waiting for our legal counsel to let us know if there's just a standard form that when the audit is performed, that an authorized broker can sign, and say, yes, there is one in place. Otherwise, the staff at Monmouth Ocean Regional Realtors will have to learn every single buyer agency agreement for every member.
Mm-hmm. Good point. I know that we were waiting for the form, for the governor to sign
The bill, yeah, that
yeah.
bill. Mhm.
Go ahead, Diane, if you want to speak on that.
Oh, so yeah,
Um,
there's a bill on the governor's desk to be signed that New Jersey realtors put through legislation that will mandate buyer agency agreements. Once that's signed, it's going to go into effect pretty quickly. They're thinking by August 1st. So even though our settlement agreement calls for August 17th, the state may mandate that be a lot sooner. Along with that, there's a few other items, and that is sellers' disclosures will be mandatory. They have to be filled out by everyone. When you're doing an open house, there's going to have to be a sign that says that you represent the seller and you do not represent anybody walking into the home unless they sign a buyer agency agreement with you. And I think that was the main ones. Am I forgetting anything,
I
Linda?
think
There might be one other thing.
Designated agency.
Mhm.
Oh, designated agency, right. So if you're using dual agency and now you have a buyer for that property, you can make a designated agent from your office represent one or the other party. So the same agent is not representing both parties, and then you could get paid by both parties. Because as of right now, disclosed dual agents can only be paid by one party. So if you have a buyer agent paying you and a seller agent paying you on the same transaction, the only way to do that would be through designated agency. And that's something that's going to be coming from the real estate commission. And then there will be another, I think, for your, what do I want to say? When you want to renew your license and you have to have your credits, there's going to be another course that's going to have to be taken on agency. I think it's like a 1 credit course, so it'll be an hour.
And I think in all of the representations, I believe the bill said that you could be paid by one side or more, or any side. You could be paid by multiple parties on all, whether you're a buyer agent, whether you're a seller's agent, whether you're disclosed dual agent or designated. I believe that they all said can be paid by multiple parties.
So the
Um,
For
one thing though
example,
that,
for example,
right.
if you had a buyer agent, because remember, with the buyer agency agreements, you have to declare, just like you do in a listing agent, a listing agreement, what your compensation is going to be. So if it's less than what what a seller is offering, then the buyer will pay the difference. If it's more, let's all address that, because we know that no one really wants to abide by this, and everyone's upset over this. But if your buyer agency agreement says that you will work for 2% and the seller is offering you 2.5%, you must give the surplus 0.5% to your buyer at closing as a concession.
Yeah, that's a great point. If you just repeat that last statement that you made, because there's so much confusion about that, Linda,
So
about if there's
if you declare the percentage or dollar amount, whatever it is that your compensation is going to be in your buyer agency agreement, and a seller is offering more than whatever you've agreed to, the surplus between what the seller is paying and what your contract, your agreement states, is to be given to the buyer at closing as a concession.
Or you can negotiate it off the price of the house. I mean, it could be negotiated. I don't think you have to give it to the buyer, but you cannot get paid that money is basically what it is. And when you do a buyer agency agreement, it can't be open-ended. Like you can't write in whatever the seller is willing to pay. It has to be an amount. So keep
good,
that in
okay.
mind.
That's great. Great information, because I know that's a question that we get a lot here in our support. Speaking of concessions, I know that there is much talk about that. I recently, I went with Caitlin to the Flex conference in Fargo, and it was so interesting to speak with other, members of MLSs across the country and how they're handling concessions, or where it can be, or what the legalities of it. And what the one thing that I found so interesting that Caitlin and I discussed was so many of the answers that were given were, well, we're waiting to hear from our attorney. Our attorney is going to guide us regarding that. So can you speak about that a little bit as far as we're concerned with the concessions? Are we going to be adding a field for it? That's something that I know is still being discussed. And whether there'll be would you like to take that, Linda? About the
Sure.
concession?
I wasn't sure if you were asking Caitlin or myself, so.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. So
Okay.
at the last MLS committee
Yes.
meeting, we did not bring forth a motion. There were lengthy discussions around whether or not to offer concessions in the MLS. Because some other MLSs, especially, geographically, in our proximity, are allowing concessions to be put on there at the active stage. We have to be very careful, because if you start giving concessions of dollar amounts or percentages, you're just really swapping the word concession for commission. And
Mhm.
it's something that we really want to wait to see, wait a little bit longer before we implement that, because the last thing we want to do is end up in a lawsuit after, because we allowed that field. The seller can offer anything they want. We're just saying we don't want to communicate any concessions, because a concession is exactly that. It's a concession from the seller to the buyer. It's not a concession from the seller to the buyer's agent, right? It's just a monetary or whatever they're giving as a concession from one client to another. So we feel like right now that can be negotiated at the time of an offer, but it's not something that we're willing to put into the MLS yet until we see where everything lands once August 17th passes.
Perfect. And that's an important point. I know that Caitlin could probably speak a little bit about this. I also want to mention, please put in your questions. Please put in your questions. We're here to answer your questions. You can put in, don't feel it's silly. This is all new information to everyone. Anything that you need to know about, feel free. I know, Caitlin, that we had talked about, and concessions were talked about when we were out in Fargo, and how it was so crucial. If you want to speak about that to reiterate what Linda said, that we don't want in any shape or form to indicate that that's replacing the compensation. So I don't know if you want to add to that at all, Caitlin, or
Just, yeah, that was what we were discussing in the MLS committee meeting that we held. It's not a replacement for commission fields, so that's why we don't want to implement that at this time. Agents are still able to put in concessions upon closing the listing. So you can still input that in that field once you're closing the listing out, but we don't want to put anything with an active listing at this time.
Exactly. And the key also is to make sure that our agents know that it's not a matter of finding a way to get the commission in there. It's a way to learn to work in a way that you're not going to communicate commission through the MLS. Find your way to communicate it in a way that follows the rules, that won't send up a red flag, because it affects everyone.
Well,
And
not only does it affect everyone, I think that, in the lengthy conversation at the MLS committee meeting was that it's also going to skew CMAs when you go in, right?
That's right.
Because now we're not going to know, and again, we have to comply, and we're going to comply, obviously, with NAR's mandate and directives. However, when you go to price a property, if there is a concession there and you put it in there, then you'll know, so that you can price that property. But you're not going to know now, since there are no offers of commission. So again, it was not an easy decision to not put it in the MLS at this time because of these conversations, but we just have to, we cannot put ourselves in a legal spotlight at the moment.
Yeah, thank you for that. We still get questions here from people saying, when I close a listing, if there is a concession, do I include it in the sale price? We have, when you close a listing, can you answer that for us?
I'm
Linda,
sorry?
if you want. We have questions here where agents ask, if there is a concession, do I include it in the close price when I close a listing? Is it included in the close price, the sale price of the home, the concession?
Well, if a seller is offering a concession, then the seller is paying that. So it's not about, you're not it's included in the sale. Well, when you look at the closing disclosure, it's going to be included in there. However, it's also going to show that it was a cost incurred by the seller to sell their home, right? So it is included in there. You can't not include it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I think the distinction was whether it goes under the concession field or whatever, if the dollar amount, is it included in the closed price of the sale? I mean, that we get that question a lot.
It's always included in the close price. So if a property closes at 400,000, you're going to see in the MLS that it closed at 400,000, but then you will see that there was a concession of 10,000, so that the net price was 390. Right? When you're going to price out another home, or when you're looking at that property individually. So we do have that opportunity now. Am I correct, Caitlin, where that is not going to be removed for closed properties?
Correct. Yeah, that's still going to be allowed in the closing operation when you're moving to change the status.
Question again.
Right. Okay.
Okay, there was a question again. Can an agent be paid by both the buyer, by the seller, and also by the buyer? There was that question.
Currently.
Are they dual agent?
Yeah, not if they're a dual agent.
Until the governor signs the bill that's on his desk, they cannot pay only when it's a dual agency scenario. But if you have two different brokers and the buyer, the seller is offering you, let's just say, $1 amount, and it's a little bit under your agency agreement, your buyer can pay you the difference. So yes, you can be paid by two parties, but only right now if you are not in a dual agency scenario. It's the only time that is effective.
Right.
Can seller concessions, not commission, be put in the agent comments?
Seller concessions not
Can they be put in the agent notes?
if it's a concession from the seller to the buyer, that's a good question. My answer would be yes, it can be, because it's not a commission, it's a concession from the seller to the buyer. But I think that we might need to get some clarity around that.
Yeah, legal advice.
Exactly.
Where you can put it, whether it be in public notes, because again, your buyer can instruct you, don't show me, like Diane said, we do have buyers that don't have the opportunity to pay, maybe they're a first-time home buyer and they don't have an opportunity or financially capable of paying a commission as well. So it's the buyer's right to say to you, don't show me a property that I have to pay you a commission on. I mean, they're instructing you to do that. So I just don't know if we, as far as the concession, if we can put it in agent.
Can you see those?
I know what I'd like to say, but I don't know that I can say that.
Okay, yeah, and that's a good point. You know, some of the questions that are being answered today are new to the panel members also. I mean, we're going along as we get information. There's some questions that can't be answered today, but we will be looking into them and make sure that information becomes available to you. Because as we go along, and as everyone knows, some things have changed from the beginning of when the settlement came out. I mean, we all know dates have changed, conditions have changed. There's so many resources of information, not just coming from us, but I know, Caitlin, you have something that Lauren had created. If you want to talk about that a little bit, that's coming up in on our website.
Sure, yeah, I can share my screen actually just to make sure that everybody can see it. Let me grab that. So Lauren St. Nicholas, who works with us as our Senior Director of Education and Engagement, she created a web page on our website that we can navigate to now. So once you land on MonmouthOceanRealtors.com, this is the home screen. We have a couple of announcements going on. You'll navigate to the More MLS tab right here. And then with the asterisks, the second one down, it says New NAR Settlement and MLS Updates. Once you select that page, it'll bring you to a countdown that's telling you when the changes will take place on the MLS, when the commission fields will be removed. So that's an active countdown. It's rolling as the day goes on. We also have the highlighted dates here, just letting you know what's coming down the pipe. So we have July 2024. That's when all our webinars will be conducted. Just trying to get as much education as we can, and conversation going about this before the date comes up. August 15th is when all compensation and commission fields will be removed, like we were saying. And August 17th is when the compliance team will begin auditing every 20th pending listing. The buyer's agency agreement, that's what we're looking for there. That goes into effect on the 17th. And then as we scroll, you can see the upcoming education webinars. This will be updated as we select new dates and times to move forward from this point on until August 17th. And then any additional resources, we have facts.realtors linked right here. That's a very helpful webpage from NAR. They have a giant Q&A there going over everything that has to do with the settlement. Any questions you might have, you might find there. They're also open to members emailing them with any questions. Their legal team will try to answer as many as they can. And if it's a question that hasn't been addressed yet, they're really good at updating this page and giving you an answer there. I'll visit that now just so you can see it. So once we get to facts.realtor, we're just going to scroll a little bit. Over here on the left side, it says Settlement FAQ. Once you select that, this is all the Q&As they have that are currently running. They just updated it as of July 8th, so 2 days ago. And I think they have nearly 100 questions on here. They're categorized depending on what you're looking for. So it's a very organized, helpful webpage for you if you need questions answered, any resources, that's here as well. Yeah, they have about 106 questions now. So that's updated daily.
And I
once
think
again, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to let people know that that's the NAR facts, right? But
Yes.
New Jersey Real Estate Commission is a completely separate entity. So if you're unclear on some of those answers, please check with your broker, because New Jersey has some more constrictive regulations.
Gotcha.
Perfect. And NAR is offering a webinar. I mean, it's going to be available to people who cannot attend in person. If you want to speak about that a little bit, Diane, about that coming up for our brokers and managers and owners.
Yeah, the New Jersey State Association is having a seminar, and you can also join on Zoom. It'll be on July 25th at the Pines Manor. And I guess that's in Edison on
Yes.
Route 27.
Right.
And if you can't make it, there is a Zoom option as well. So that'll be a really important update, because I think by then the governor will have signed that bill, and it'll be a really good overview of what we need to do moving forward. I also wanted to mention in case you don't know, which I know they've been promoting this a lot, NAR is offering the ABR course for free online. You go to become.abr.realtor. Somebody wants to put that in the chat. You can sign up for a 2-day ABR course for free, and there's a wealth of great information there for your agents.
Perfect. We have some questions coming in. Can a buyer direct the buyer's agent to only show them homes where the seller is offering buyer agent compensation?
Yes. Yes, but it has to come from the buyer. And honestly,
Right.
I would, if even if they agreed to that, I would probably send them the listings and say, this one is not offering, so let me know if you want to see it or not. So you're not steering. You want to make sure you're not steering people. So I would get double permission. That's me though, so.
No, I totally agree. I mean, again, it's written instruction by your client. However, sometimes you want to give that little bit extra just to make sure, because there's nothing that says that even if a seller is not offering them a commission, you couldn't negotiate,
Right,
commission or concession into your contract.
right.
So I would say always keep take the ABR without a doubt and do what's in the client.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Okay, will buyer agency bonuses be allowed?
Sure.
I know that's a difficult question, I think, to answer at this current
I
time,
think
but
it's not difficult at all. It's absolutely the only
We-
thing that's
yeah.
changing is we cannot communicate it in the MLS. There's
Right.
Thank
nothing
you.
else that's changing in our industry other than the fact of how we can offer compensation, and that whole box down there of fees, commissions, bonuses, all of that is going to be struck from the MLS, but it doesn't negate anyone's client from offering anything that they would like to offer to an agent, to another client, to a potential, buyer of their home. It's just how we communicate it.
So, in the case of dual agent, can we be compensated by both parties, buyer and seller?
As
Yeah,
of
we
right
already discussed that. No.
Yeah, I know, but they're bringing it up again. Just want to reiterate that. Just want to make sure they're
send an
clear.
email to Governor Murphy asking to sign that.
Yeah,
That's right. Okay. Um, Question, how will the buyers pay buyer's agent commission? Writing a separate check? And can the seller still pay commission to the buyer's agent?
Do you guys want me to answer that?
Yes, please.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, however, it has to be paid at closing. So whether the buyer is bringing money to the closing table, whether the buyer is asking you to include it in their sale price, and then there's some verbiage in there that says that, the offer is written for, 400,000, let's just say, and the buyer is financing a commission percentage amount. Like, as long as you're communicating, if you're writing an offer of commission being paid by the seller, if you're writing an offer with that in there, just make sure that you're very clear that the seller is paying the commission out of that amount. Does that make sense?
Yeah, does make sense. Did you want to add to that at all,
Well,
Diane?
it doesn't, well, I'm saying it doesn't mean that the buyer has to bring the check to the closing, because let's face it, at the end of the day, the buyer is the one who comes to the closing with the bucket of money.
right.
So
It's all going to be included from the title company. They're going to figure out who's bringing what. And most of the time it's included in the sale price. But, if they had to bring the money and they don't have the money, they could up the sale price, include most of it in their mortgage, right? They're going to mortgage most of it and then bring whatever percentage that they were putting down, 10%, whatever. So that is going to be up to the title company to figure out who's bringing what.
which is probably, I mean, since we're all on here, that might be a great course in the trainings that we're having throughout the month of July, to have, one of our affiliate title companies come on and
Yeah.
explain, what
Yes.
that looks like, so that,
Yeah, that's
so that
great.
it can articulate that not only to their buyer, but to their seller, right? Because even
Mhm.
if a buyer is rolling their agent's commission including it into the sale of the home, it's going to look on the closing disclosure as a cost incurred by the seller, which, if I'm correct, is a bonus to the seller because it's a cost incurred in selling their home. But I'm not a tax accountant, so maybe we should have a tax accountant come on as well, because there's different ways to spin this. I think that, we're going off and speaking about a lot of different ways, because the way we're going to be doing business is going to be different moving forward, but it's really not going to be that different. When sellers are still going to offer commissions to agents who bring a buyer. Now buyers also, write offers, and they have seller concessions in there, to help, with the closing costs. So I think it's just the conversations are going to change, the conversations that we have with our sellers, the conversations that we have with our buyers. And we need to come from educating our members on how to have those conversations without, like Diane said, without making it look like you're steering someone in one direction, or, you're not doing what's in the best interest of your client.
Right. We still have to follow the code of ethics, which is so important. So, and the other thing I thought of, is, with this buyer agency agreements is, when you first meet someone and they want to see, say, your listing, it's important to ask them, have they signed something with someone else, right? Because there might be people that sign something without really reading it. You know how people do that. And they might sign a contract thinking that they're only signing something to look at one property that day. And meanwhile, they signed, a 6-month buyer agency agreement. So, that's going to be the other little hurdle we have to contend with, is making sure that who we're working with, understands how this works, and that they didn't sign something with someone previously that's still in existence. So we
And
have to
that's
do
gonna
our due
come-
diligence.
Right. And that's going to come from us educating brokers, educating their agents, us educating our members. It takes a village, guys. We are the village.
Yes.
So partner with us, and we'll get through this. And things might change. We don't know. The original bill that was sent up for, to the Senate and to the Assembly, then there was an amendment to it, right? I have not even seen the amendment. So we're all talking about what the governor's signing, but I haven't seen the actual amended version of the original bill. So as we know it, we're just going to keep bringing it forth to you. And again, give us your input, send emails over, send to Lauren, send to Caitlin, send to Marie, send to Diane, myself, so that we can have these meetings, when the MLS committee meets, when the board of directors meet, to say, how can we service our members at a higher level by giving you what you want, or the questions, answering the questions that you have. So, we're sitting here saying, okay, these are the questions we think everyone has. So I love the fact that people are adding questions in here, but if there's something that comes, into your mind afterward, feel free to send that email over so it can be addressed.
Absolutely.
There are so many questions coming in, and I know that we're not going to get to all of them, but keep them coming, because we will address them. We will look into the answers that you need and communicate those answers with you, because what you're asking, other brokers are probably wondering the same thing, or managers or owners. Can we use the buyer's agency agreement form 121 as a basis to create our own brokerage buyer agency agreement using the language and text we need from form 121? That might be considered more of a legal question. I'm not really clear.
Yeah.
If you'd like to address that at all.
I think that we can't edit the one that's there, but if you use that as a base, your brokerage can, have an attorney look at it. And they all have to have the same points, right? A beginning and end, a compensation, right? Signatures. I mean, it's the standard things that need to be in the contract, but not everybody, I know brokerages that use a 1-page, a 1-page buyer agency agreement, a 6-page, a 15-page. It's really whatever the one that the state gave us is a guideline for us to use, but you cannot change a copyrighted form. You're correct, Marie. Just like you can't edit the listing agreement right now because it's a copyrighted document.
Right. Great. Does this also apply to brokerages and agency that deal with commercial properties, that list and lease commercial properties? The information that's being discussed today.
No,
NAR settlement is not
just
relative to,
residential's.
Okay. See here. Can you please reconfirm around dual agency, a seller is agreeing to one commission with whether representing just seller or seller buyer? Any additional compensation for buyer's commission would have to come from the buyers? Yes. I just need some clarity on this. I know that we've discussed that.
are we talking dual agency though? Because
Yes,
Yes.
yeah, for dual agent,
yeah, right now you cannot be paid by more than one party in a dual
Right.
agency. And governor signs the bill that's on his desk.
right, so if the seller is only paying the listing broker and not a buyer's broker, and you want to sell that as a dual agent, you're only gonna get the listing side.
That's
Basically, right?
Yeah.
Unless you negotiate a commission into that offer whereby
Right.
one party is paying.
Right, you
Right.
can negotiate whatever you want, right, with the seller at that point, if you have a really good buyer for the house, you just can't get paid by the buyer separately in a dual agent situation.
Okay. A question is, what's going to stop buyers bypassing buyer's agents and going directly to the listing agent? Is there any suggestions on that to give our agents?
No, I think that, again, most of the time through syndication and IDX, most listing agents do get leads, you know, on their properties that they have listed. The question is going to have to be, like Diane said, the first question, go back to ethics, is, are you currently working with another broker, and do you have a signed agreement with another broker? I know that everyone thinks that that all the buyers are going to go directly to the listing agent, right? So that they don't have to pay a buyer agency commission. But again, that's not something I really don't see a lot of change in our industry. I still see sellers paying commissions for buyer agents, but you know, there are going to be clients that do go and there are people now who
They
go,
do
I mean,
it
look at
now.
the shortage of the inventory that we have.
Yeah.
How many of you guys have had clients that say, well, I'm just going to go to a listing agent because I'm going to get,
Mhm.
you know, I'm going to get my offer accepted
Yeah, they
that
do
way
it now.
because there's multiple offers. It doesn't work that way. You know, so it's a mindset, and it really is going to have to come down to the education that we're offering
Right,
our
and the
members, so that how
training,
you can prove your
right.
value.
Right, the
Yeah.
buyer agents, you know, you have to do the ABR course, demonstrate your value, you know, be able to articulate it to your clients so that they're gonna wanna work with you. Yeah, people are gonna go directly to the listing agent, but you know what? I think if you're a listing agent and you have 20 people calling you for the same house, like, who are you representing? Like, you can't represent 20 people on the same house. So after a while, people are gonna be like, I need my own agent because this isn't working. So I think it'll all, there might be some bumps, like I said, in the road, but it's all gonna flush out and everybody will get used to it. Everybody will know, okay, I have to sign a contract to work with an agent. It's just like going to a lawyer, right? You go to a lawyer, you have a consultation, you might go to 3 lawyers, and then you pick the one you want to work with. Same thing. So you just have to, we have to demonstrate that we are capable to help our clients in the best way.
Agreed.
You mentioned that we could put an offer of buyer agent compensation on our agency websites, but the offers of compensation can't be on sites that feed directly from the MLS. What if your website has a property search that is fed from the MLS?
So that was the question that I asked directly myself as the chair of the MLS, because when you put a listing in, you see public remarks and then you see syndication remarks. So this is going to be a Caitlin question, right? Because Caitlin, the syndication remarks are what is your broker feed, correct?
Right. Yes.
Right.
Mhm.
So that's where you can have personal information. So we did bring that up. Did we get an answer on that as far as whether or not, because again, the sites are linked, right? Especially anyone who's with a large franchise, you know, they do get a broker feed from the MLS.
Mhm. Yeah, so it's tricky because the feed is still coming from the MLS as the source.
So I think the question was the last time, do we have to remove syndication remarks
Mhm.
from Flex? Because we might have to, right?
Yeah.
Because of NAR. And it's not because we want to do it. If NAR says it can't come as a direct link from the MLS, right now the MLS is feeding to the public sites, and then they're feeding to the broker feeds to you directly. So if that is a violation, then syndication will have to be removed.
Right, or not necessarily removed, but we could put a constraint in there as well, just a pop-up saying you can't use this type of language or a percent, anything like that. Like we can do what we're doing with public remarks and agent notes, something like that. So it doesn't have to be totally removed maybe, but we can at least put a constraint there to guide our members that they can't put certain verbiage in there.
Mm-hmm. And if I could just go back, Marie, to what Diane was talking about before, as far as, you know, everyone going to the listing agent, right? When you have dual agency, let's go back to the fact that you have a fiduciary duty, right? When you're in dual agency, you don't have fiduciary, you have honest and fair dealings. So I think that that's where designated agency is really going to come into play in how we service our clients at the highest level, because now the broker can designate who has a fiduciary duty to the seller and who has a fiduciary duty to the buyer within the same brokerage without it being dual agency. It would be so designated agency is the broker. Am I correct, Diane, in designating which agent represents which party?
Right, yes. So as long as it's two different agents in the office
Right.
representing.
So essentially, dual agency would then only be the scenario where it would be single agent dual agency, where you yourself sell your own listing.
Right. Yes.
Perfect. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Linda. The ABR course that I took recently instructed us that the only language we can use when inquiring about compensation with the listing broker is the seller willing to offer anything to the buyer to offset the expense of the buyer's agent? Is this acceptable language for the MLS? MOMLS.
I don't think that we can articulate on that at the moment.
Exactly, yeah. That's
Yeah.
something that we can look into and maybe have more information for you, but
Well, because again, it's that fine line where, you know, we don't want to end up in the, you know, in the crosshairs of the DOJ, right? Where you're removing commission, but now you're putting concessions, or now you're putting in your agent remarks or whatever that the seller is willing. I think that we need to kind of stay away from all of that right now and just train on how to negotiate it, right? And how to have these conversations. I know I keep saying that over and over, and I don't mean to be remiss about it, but it's going to come in the training. It's going to come in the training that the brokers are offering their agents. It's going to, you know, we all learn from the conversations that we surround ourselves with. So we just continue to have these conversations and have people like Diane, who are so plugged in at the state level, you know, bringing that back, and Caitlin, you know, and Marie yourself, you know, with Flex and the tools that we use, you know, to see what, you know, listen, if there's a gray area, we can find it, right? But right now there's no gray area.
That's correct. And as we move forward, again, there's going to be scenarios that come up. People are going to have questions, like the questions that we didn't get to today. We'll be sure to look at them and see if we can return the answers as quickly as possible, whether we need to contact legal counsel or we need to contact NAR, or if we have questions that we need to go to other parties for. There's a question here regarding about VA loans, and if the VA the veteran is required to pay the commission. That's something that would be a great tool, like you spoke about before, with a mortgage officer coming in or with title companies coming in. This is going to be like a series moving forward. As the questions come in, as the scenarios change, we will have that information for you. And this is just the beginning of how the information is going to be given to you. As the panel, are there any final comments that anybody would like to make before we sign off here?
I would just like to say that please know that we're coming from education. Even when we start to do the audits through the MLS on the pendids, this is not about, you know, sending a violation or sending a fine. We don't even have fines in place. It's about educating our members and everyone learning a new way, you know, that we have to conduct our business, and we're all in it together. It's not about us against anyone else, or the board against, you know, the MLS against the brokers, or we're all in it together. We'll get through.
Great.
Yeah, and I just want to say that we have a great association and a wonderful staff. Thank you, Marie and Caitlin and Lauren and everyone that works at Monmouth Ocean Regional Realtors. And we really, really, really appreciate you so much. We really do. And I know this is, you know, a trying time for everybody, but like I said, we'll get through it and it'll all be fine.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. For all brokers and managers, just know that there will be another session next week. We will be communicating through you, make sure you read that newsletter. There'll be all kinds of information in it. So please keep that in mind, and please ask your agents to make sure they read that newsletter. There's so much. I'd like to thank you all for participating today. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Diane. We know how busy you are.
My pleasure.
Thank you for everything that you've said and the information that you've shared with other brokers. We look forward to speaking with you again. Caitlin, thank you for the work that you're doing. And I'd like to appreciate all your information regarding what's happening in Flex and what'll be coming up. And Lauren, thank you so much for your participation in this and getting this all together. So everybody, we wish you a good day, and I personally look forward to seeing you in the future, and we'll talk with you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so
Have a
much.
great day.
Bye.